I've never seen this movie before. It was okay.
Jurassic Park?
Kidding. It's like my favorite movie. Ross's face.
Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name is Josh Lindell. I'm a grad student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with...
I'm Kim Plump. I'm a bioarchaeologist. I study human evolution and health and disease.
I'm Ross Barnett, a paleogeneticist looking mainly at Ice Age cats.
And I'm Elsa Panciroli, and I'm a paleontologist at the Oxford University Museum of Natural History, and I study mammals.
Thank you for being with us today. So we have a special guest today for a special movie. We have basically abandoned our theme, which is normally Ice Age people and animals, and we're looking at Jurassic Park today. I think we're doing this because there are not as many good caveman movies as we might have hoped, and we have watched a lot of bad movies lately, and we need to watch a good movie. So thank you for being here with us on what I assume is going to be a great episode, because I think we can spoil this one. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I assume that's true for most of you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is my favorite movie.
Oh.
So as usual, we'll start with a summary of the movie. Elsa, would you like to do the honors and summarize Jurassic Park for us?
Yeah, sure. I will be amazed if any of your listeners haven't at least heard of Jurassic Park, although I don't know. So Jurassic Park, it is basically the story of a theme park that has dinosaurs, and these dinosaurs have been brought back to life by a billionaire, who has extracted DNA from mosquitoes in order to reconstruct their gene sequences. And he basically want to open this park, but there's some concerns over the fact that some people are getting eaten. So he recruits a blood-sucking lawyer and some paleontologists and a chaotician, because obviously a chaotician is exactly what you need in this scenario, to come and endorse his park. And of course, there's a storm and much eating of chaoticians and so on commences. Oh, well, spoiler, the chaotician doesn't get eaten, but yeah. There's people eating and much general enjoyment and entertainment.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think.
Thank goodness the chaotician survived.
He doesn't survive in the book.
He does not, no. I can go into more detail, but I mean, generally, I assume that everybody knows is just lots of dinosaurs chasing people and there's some electrocutions and yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
He survives in the book because he makes it to the second book.
I think they retcon it. I think he's like left pretty much dead in the first book, and then they bring him back because it's Jeff Goldblum, and so
no, but in the book,
character.
Ian Malcolm is the main character in the second book.
Yeah, but he's dead in the first one.
No, I don't. Okay, I'll have to read it again.
Okay.
I haven't read it for so long, I can't remember either. I had a feeling you're right, that I thought Ian Malcolm died, but that the lawyer ended up being the hero.
Yeah, I think the lawyer survives, and I think Hammond dies in the book as well.
I'm quite excited because now I have a reason to read it again. And the look that Ross just gave me means that I'm very wrong, but I still want to read it to make sure.
I seem to remember in the book that somebody gets nibbled to death by Compsognathus.
Yeah, right at the start.
Yeah, that's in the movie too.
What a way to go.
So why don't we start with scientific inaccuracies in this movie? This came out when I was a kid, and
can I go first?
Well, when I was a kid, I really liked this movie because I also read the book when I was probably like 12 years old, and like compared to the dinosaurs that came before this movie, it was so much more modern and more realistic, so it felt like it was very scientifically accurate. But of course, there's a lot of artistic liberties taken. And of course, a lot of it's already outdated because it's almost 30 years old at this point. So, yeah. Ross, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, Josh. So I looked at a couple of YouTube videos of dinosaur appearances in films, going from, very early Lost World, King Kong from the 20s and 30s, up through films that we've reviewed before, like 1 Million Years BC and Caveman and things like that, up to Jurassic Park. And the kind of contrast between as much as I love them, the kind of stop motion dinosaurs versus the puppets versus the Jurassic Park dinosaurs. It's just like night and day. I mean, it's incredible for the time, and it still holds up in terms of the animation. But I mean, the big problem that I have, and I'm sure everyone who's even sort of tangentially related to the field of ancient DNA has as well, is that it's kind of influenced popular culture so much that everyone kind of assumes we're always just 5 years away from cloning, if not dinosaurs, then certainly mammoths and saber-toothed cats and things like that. And Michael Crichton was famous for researching his background very well, which he did for this book. And so it was, at the time, I think it came out in the earliest 90s, it was looking like realistic science. So he based it on the kind of early papers in ancient DNA. So ancient DNA as a field started in 1984 when some researchers were able to extract DNA from a museum squin of an extinct zebra. And after that, there was kind of a race to get the oldest DNA that they could, but there wasn't the controls in place, so it was a bit of a Wild West period, and people were claiming DNA from amber preserved insects, from dinosaur eggshell, from dinosaur bones even, and this was all getting published in top tier journals like Nature, PNAS, and it also got a lot of press as well, a lot of reporting. And so this influenced Michael Crichton while he's writing it. And at the time, it did seem at least scientifically plausible, given the papers that were coming out, that we would be able to get real dinosaur DNA at some point. And then in the book and in the film, they kind of mix it up with frog DNA. I mean, frogs, like things like Xenopus, are a sort of classic model organism, which we do have the genome for now. And so they mix it in with frogs to kind of fill in the gaps. And so that was quite astute, because even from the earliest days, one of the key findings of ancient DNA was that it was broken up. It had lots of gaps in it. DNA in the cell in a human cell is like 3 billion base pairs long with no breaks in it, whereas stuff that's coming out of the ground from fossil bones is cut up into tiny fragments because it's just degraded. But yeah, I mean, since then, we've realized that those papers looking at dinosaur DNA from bones and eggshells, and even the ones from fairly geologically recent, like Miocene fossils and amber, are all basically mistakes. The people were amplifying human DNA or just random DNA in the environment and passing it off mistakenly and in good faith as dinosaur DNA. So we do know now that the kind of theoretical limit for DNA survival is only going to be in the order of 1 to 5 million years, maybe 6 or 7, I think, is the theoretical maximum. But the actual maximum is going to be way, way younger than any non-avian dinosaurs. So that's the big problem. And Jurassic Park's kind of reach has been so huge that the general public does definitely still think that dinosaur DNA is a thing that will be able to clone stuff. And at the moment, we can't clone we can't clone birds. That's something that's not possible. We can clone amphibians. We can clone some mammals using kind of techniques that lead to living cells. But birds are tricky because the eggshell is a real barrier to any kind of microscope work or microinjection, essentially. So yeah, that's my big bugbear.
So Ross, you've been involved in a few studies where you've gotten DNA from ancient DNA from things long extinct, right? So if you had one of those DNA strands, or you had some DNA and there was gaps in it, and you wanted to bring one of those animals back, would you automatically leap to a completely different phylogenetically distinct part of the tree? Would you use frog DNA to bring back your lions? I mean,
I always have some frogs on hand. I always have some frogs on hand just when I need to fill in the gaps. No, I mean, that's another fantastic point. I mean, why on earth they thought that frogs would be the best thing to go to? I mean, it does fill in a kind of plot gap. So that one of the plot strands in the film is that the dinosaurs are engineered to be all female, but Grant, the paleontologist played by Sam Neill, discovers that they're breeding in the wild of the park because some of them are switching sex like some frogs do. So, I mean, I think that's the best explanation. And yeah, things like Xenopus, the kind of clawed toad, have been used for a long time as a model organism. So maybe that. But yeah, definitely, if you're working with dinosaurs, you want to have a bird as your kind of reference genome. I think that would be
I've
that
always
makes the
thought
most sense.
it was so unfortunate because, when I was young, I had a budgie that when I got it was a girl and ended up being a boy. And so, I mean, it's not just amphibians that can do it. There's so many different animal groups that are capable of
A
switching
Jurassic
like
budgie.
that. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So it's just such a shame. I always think that they didn't, think that, because it's so, as you say, so well researched in so many other ways. And then there are these huge, big flaws, which of course have a massive literature of discussion online.
And so and they're finding new ones all the time, like sharks. Obviously, they wouldn't be a very good match, but Komodo dragons had recently discovered within the past sort of 5 or 6 years that they can reproduce parthenogenetically. So without males, females can give birth to young, which is not uncommon in lizards. So I mean, they don't even have to really reach for the kind of amphibian sex changing. They could just say that was something that happened in lizards and was also in dinosaurs. That would have worked as well.
As for the birds, isn't 1993 when this movie, or I guess it would be earlier when the book was written, the relationship between birds and dinosaurs was hypothesized, but it wasn't necessarily accepted by everybody at that time. Like, it was still argued, right? So maybe that's why you didn't put it in.
I don't think it was as argued as we are kind of led to believe. I think it's like, isn't it a bit like climate change? There's always the people who dissent are really vocal and make it seem like it's a 50-50 argument, when actually it's really a 99-1 argument.
Right.
So as far as I understand, obviously having only been a wee bairn at the time, that it was pretty accepted, but maybe it hadn't filtered to every level of, of society, of general discussion. So I can see why. Because I think Alan Grant even says when Timmy, the little boy, is talking at him, he says something like, do you really think the dinosaurs turned into birds?
Yeah.
And his response is, some species may have evolved along those lines. Yes. Which is a very well-chosen couch answer that's not picking either direction.
Yeah. Well, and they set it up to me when he's talking to Alan when they're in, like, trying to get into the cars. He sets it up that Alan's controversial hypothesis is that they turn into birds. So that he sets it up even that it's been argued, and and he brings up Backer, right? Who is an actual paleontologist.
Who was part of the inspiration for Grant.
Yeah, and Phil Curry too, right? Yeah. Ross, what is the oldest DNA that they have gotten from fossils?
So the oldest is, I think, on the order of 1 million years, which is from a mammoth from the permafrost. So that's where, so that's something that's been kept frozen for 1 million years with very little kind of temperature fluctuations, which, like sticking stuff in your freezer, it's going to keep it preserved better. I think that paper came out a couple of years ago now. Obviously, you have to allow for the fact that time has ceased to have all meaning since the lockdown. I think that's when it came out. And before that, the oldest was a horse from the permafrost, which was about 600,000 years old. So we're kind of converging on, I think, what's going to be the maximum time frame. I mean, and a lot of interesting things happen in the past 1 million or so years, just not dinosaurs, sadly.
Yeah. I mean, another thing about, I'm sure other people have pointed out, I think that when you said that we were going to do Jurassic Park, I was a little anxious because I know that so many people know so much more about all of this than I do. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up as well was, of course, the ages of amber. Because I think, the very oldest amber we have, as far as I know, is Carboniferous, which has a few bits of arthropod in it. And then I think there's some Triassic, and I think there's a tiny bit of Jurassic somewhere as well. But there is not, certainly not in the Dominican Republic. I understand, I think that amber is only about 40 million years old. And there's just not this wealth of amber filled with insects that all have been sucking dinosaur blood that you would need to even if it was possible to try and get this DNA.
That's cool. I didn't realize that, but that's a good point. I guess it kind of ties into people just, the past is just one box. We don't kind of unpack it and realize that, there's a big difference between the Jurassic, the Cretaceous, the Carboniferous, the Miocene, and that we're used to having lots of amber, but it's probably only a couple of million years old from the kind of Baltic and that kind of region. And, amber has been one of the kind of go-tos for testing out ancient DNA techniques from right back from the early days, and for the most part, it just doesn't work. I mean, the kind of gross morphological appearance is preserved, but the kind of biochemical preservation is rubbish. And there's not, as far as I know, any papers that have succeeded in reproducing good DNA results from amber, or even copal, which is the kind of precursor of amber, the kind of subfossil amber that's a bit younger. Even that is terrible for DNA preservation.
And I was looking to see so I did a terrible job of summarizing the movie, because the subplot, of course, is that Dennis Nedry, who is the slobby sort of a computer programmer who works at the park, is being paid an extraordinary amount of money by another company to steal all of the DNA from InGen, is it? The one that runs Jurassic Park? Yeah, to steal it all. He's going to get all this money for doing it. So, of course, he rigs the park to go and be able to steal all this DNA, but then gets eaten on his way to the boat to escape. But he, sorry, spoiler alert. But I was, of course, paying close attention, as many have before me, to which dinosaurs are mentioned throughout the movie, but also when he's taking all these little vials of all the different dinosaurs. And I couldn't get that many names. The obvious one is the misspelt Stegosaurus, spelt Stegosaurus instead of Stegosaurus. But what was interesting was that quite a few of the species mentioned are Middle Jurassic Oxford dinosaurs.
Okay.
And then there's a bunch of late Cretaceous ones as well. So, I mean, you'd need to have amber from multiple time periods and from Europe, at least, if not Britain, from the Jurassic, in order to bring some of these creatures back.
Should we jump in and address the kind of mammoth in the room, like right now that kind of Elsa's brought it up? Is that, should it actually be called Jurassic Park?
I actually wrote Steven Spielberg a letter when I was 10, explaining to him, and I did it very nicely, because I think he just probably didn't know that. And I listed all the dinosaurs and what period they were from. And I suggested that he might try and change it to Prehistoric Park, that would be a better name for it. And I addressed a letter to Steven Spielberg Hollywood and mailed it. I never heard back.
Oh, that is adorable. That is so cute.
He never wrote back. I can't
He never
believe
wrote
it.
back.
What a D-bag.
Or Mesozoic Park would also be acceptable.
Yeah, Mesozoic would have worked. Or Cretaceous Park. I mean, that sounds good.
That would have
to
been
me.
better. Yeah.
Well, there are quite a few Jurassic dinosaurs in it, though. I mean, so there's obviously Brachiosaurus, Proceratosaurus, Metriocarnotaurus. Is that right? These are ones I didn't even know about. Some of these, Dilophosaurus and Stegosaurus are all Jurassic, middle or late Jurassic. So actually, there are quite a few Jurassic ones there.
But the only one you actually see on screen is the Dilophosaur, I think. That's the only one.
And the Brachiosaur.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it needs to at least be Jurassic / Cretaceous Park. The slash could be a claw slash.
That would be good. Yeah, I could see that working.
But the other thing I wanted to bring up, of course, and this is my own bias as a researcher, is I would expect, if we magically were able to get DNA from these mosquitoes, from amber that exists somewhere from these time periods, would we not be far more likely to end up recreating Mesozoic mammals?
Yeah. Yes.
Which,
I think that might be your
wrong,
biases. That might be your biases showing, Elsa.
I would definitely go to that park. That would be cool.
Yeah.
They could make it a petting zoo, couldn't they?
Exactly.
That'd be much.
But I mean, if you were a
Much less
mosquito,
dangerous.
it would be a lot easier to get blood from a mammal skin, like to puncture a mammal skin, than a dinosaur skin. So I would agree.
Yeah. You could have little baby, I don't know, Obdurodon or something. That would be quite cool. Which Mesozoic mammals would you want to see in your Mesozoic park, Elsa?
Well, seeing as it seems to be that I can have either the middle or late Cretaceous or the middle or late Jurassic or the late Cretaceous, that's annoying because some of the ones I would want are early Cretaceous. I guess I'd probably want to bring back some Docodonts. because this is a group of really early diverging mammals that are really ecologically very diverse, surprisingly so for something so early.
What did they look like?
So if you saw one, you would think it was just a mammal, because superficially, of course, they've got fur, they kind of look mammally. Internally, their skeletons are not quite the same because they're an outgroup to Mammalia. But there are like little Jurassic moles. There are swimmers that maybe were a bit like an otter or a beaver, and also some tree dwellers. So I think, you could really have quite a thriving little Mesozoic mammal zoo going on if you were to get the DNA for these guys. And then later in the Cretaceous, there are some reasonably large mammals as well, little meat eaters, probably about the size of a badger. So some of those would be good fun to have.
Mm.
Maybe not to be handled, those ones.
But also less likely to swallow you whole, like a T-Rex would.
Yeah, I mean, I think the insurance for Mesozoic Mammal Park would be much easier.
Yes.
The health and safety forms are less extensive.
Yeah. So I think, one of the things about Jurassic Park is that health and safety is not much of an issue, really. I think they
clearly
they spared no expense.
Spared no expense in getting around the health and safety concerns.
Yeah. One thing that I wondered, even as a kid, was that they had all of these species of dinosaurs, and I guess it's that they could have been there, but we just didn't see them. We see them more in the second and third movies, like Stegosaurus. I wondered how they actually. Ow. Sorry.
Ouch.
You just get attacked by your cat.
Yes, for the listeners, my kitten just swatted at my microphone on my face.
She didn't like you dissing the film, that's what it was.
You said Stegosaurus is a trigger word.
That, I guess, unless they had made them and they just weren't they didn't just make an appearance in Jurassic Park 1, is how they would have known which DNA was which, because they're getting them from the amber, and then you'd have to let it develop before you would be able to say which species it was, right?
Yeah, good point.
So they would have had to have all those dinosaurs.
I guess you just have to assume they have all those dinosaurs and the kind of cells.
But then if you had a Stegosaurus, why wouldn't you put it in the first movie?
Yeah.
What I'd like to see is, is it Alien Resurrection, where there's a room filled with like mutant Ripleys, where all the experiments went wrong? I think there's a room like that in Jurassic Park filled with all the experiments that went wrong. This is a really dark version of Jurassic Park that I'm going to make in the future.
And
that would be a good movie too.
Half stegosaur, half mosquito, kind of just in a tube somewhere. That would be gross.
Or it was more frog. They put in too much frog.
Too much frog. It's a little frog with like little plates on its back.
And a thagomizer.
Yeah, or a tadpole with a thagomizer. That would be awesome.
Yeah. So, I think one of the things I really want to talk about is Ellie Sattler, who is quite clearly the best character in the whole film. And she is the paleobotanist. And she really, let's be honest, is the only proper scientist in this who actually says scientific things and actually cares about the plants. Because at the start of the movie, of course, she's in the Jeep looking with fascination at a plant that has been extinct since the Cretaceous. And she has to have her head turned to look at the big flashy dinosaur because she's so engrossed in this plant. Mm-hmm. But, okay, so there's multiple things to talk about here with her character, because she is badass and she properly does kick ass in this film.
Yeah.
But also, she's looking at this plant from the late Cretaceous. So did they bring back this plant? In which case, where did they get the DNA for that?
Oh, yeah.
That is never talked about.
Wow.
They may have wiped it off the soles of the feet of the mosquitoes when they were resting on the plants.
I mean, I have heard about, is it magnolia seeds that are thousands and thousands of years old that they planted and managed to get to flower. But I think late Cretaceous is probably pushing it for a seed in amber.
Although one of the early DNA papers was looking at leaves in a Lagerstätten, like a very well preserved lake bed, I think it was, which had Miocene leaves. I think I may be making up some of this, but the leaves are so well preserved that when you split them open, they are still green, and then they kind of fade away. So yeah, in that case, they may have just, in the kind of universe of Jurassic Park, they may have been able to just get them straight from the leaves, and then they would have known which plants they were getting.
Mm.
But yeah, it does sort of It's interesting that they've gone to all the effort to bring back the plants. I mean, maybe they're kind of part of a franchise. You've got Jurassic Park, but you've also got Jurassic Gardening World, where you have all the plants that they can sell on to the public for use in gardens.
Jurassic Arboretum.
Yeah.
But she is very much in the kind of line of Ripley's. She's the sensible one. She does the action. She kind of rescues everyone when the systems are down. She is the one that actually succeeds in turning them back on because they send out Arnold.
And she's not a set object. Like, she's wearing practical clothes, practical shoes. She doesn't have a lot of makeup and hair.
High heels.
Yeah, not like in the Jurassic World. I mean, in the second one with the animal behavioralist, she's similar, right? Julianne Moore.
I haven't seen actually any of the other Jurassic Park films. I've only seen the first one. Yeah.
Are you joking?
Oh, wow.
No, I'm not. I'm not actually joking. I've only seen Jurassic Park. I've not seen
the second one's pretty good, actually. Third one's
2, 3, or Jurassic World.
You should watch it because the first two were Jurassic 1 and 2 are based on Crichton's books, so they're the best movies.
Okay, all right.
2 is actually worth watching. Yeah,
I'll put that in the list then.
I mean, I've watched all of them. I love all of them, but the first 2 are the best.
Okay, well there you go.
I'm going to be controversial and say that I like the third one better than the second one.
Ugh. Do you like the third Godfather too?
I haven't seen any of the Godfathers.
That was harsh. Okay, wow.
Sequels.
In the second one, it's like all Hollywood, and they take the dinosaurs to California and they run through the streets of San Diego or something.
In the last
but
scene.
The third one, yeah. But it's like a big military operation. It's all about money. It's not about the science. The first one is so cool because there's so much science in it. The third one goes back to the science a little bit because they have 3D printing of the Velociraptor's nasal cavity so they can try and approximate its vocalizations, which is like pretty fictional, but they did that with a mummy. I think we talked about that mummy.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
And they also tried to put the feathers on the raptors, which is something that apparently they're correcting in the newest Jurassic World, which I'm also not going to watch because those ones have not been very good at all. I would say number 1 and number 3 are the only ones that I
just
like.
Cannot believe that you guys have watched the movies that we've watched for this podcast, but you won't watch the Jurassic World. Like, yeah, they're not the best movies, but they're still
not
just
good.
But they're
That's
okay.
true.
But if you just watch them just as movies with dinosaurs in them, they're good.
But they're not even. They're all invented dinosaurs. They've basically said in that universe they never were real dinosaurs because they mixed them with frog DNA. So they weren't truly dinosaurs in the first place. And they're like, we're going to run with that. Now we're just inventing new dinosaurs.
No, I know.
So it's not really about dinosaurs. It's just about
it's
inventing new monsters.
It's still just an escapism movie.
So my feeling about Jurassic Park is so heavily tied in with the age I was when I saw it, because to me it's one of the many nostalgia movies that I think if it came out now, I do wonder what I would actually have made of it, because a lot of my love for it is because of when it came out. And like, you were saying earlier, at the time this was just mind-blowing. They looked so real. It was magical. It was astonishing. And all the things that, of course, we haven't talked about, like, that Velociraptors' arms are all broken and facing in the wrong direction and they don't have feathers and all this kind of stuff. At the time, that kind of didn't really matter because it was so mind-blowing that they did it. But I think, I can't help but feel that I can't give that same excuse to anything that's come out more recently. I just think, we know so much more now that I find it very difficult to make the same leeway for the new movies.
True. I mean, they could have made the Jurassic Worlds way better, but
the mid-90s, I think, were a fairly magical time for kind of summer blockbuster films.
Yes.
And so I remember going going with a bunch of friends to line up at the cinema at La Scala in Inverness to go and see Jurassic Park, and just being in the queue, there being a huge buzz about it. And then you also had other big films of the 90s like Independence Day and other ones,
Titanic.
Which you don't really kind of Titanic as well. You don't really get those kind of event films, I think, anymore. Well, certainly not in the same way. I mean, Jurassic Park, again, original, not coming from a franchise, not coming from a known kind of shared universe. It was a bit of a gamble, even with sort of Steven Spielberg directing and Michael Crichton being the source author. Whereas nowadays, it's almost like you wouldn't get that level of investment from something that hasn't come from the Marvel universe or from the DC universe or is a sequel to a film that's done well before.
Yeah, but that makes it so boring. I haven't even wanted to go to the theater in a long time.
I can't be the only one as well who gets a wee tear in my eye when they first see the Brachiosaurus and they're all just like,
that scene, it gets every time my heart gets.
The music, the kind of the acting, the sort of acting with a capital A by Sam Neill and Laura Dern it's just fantastic.
And Muldoon. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, he's got like 6 lines or something, and he's such a legendary character. Like, still to my day with my friends, we kind of quote his lines, clever girl, and they should all be put down, that kind of stuff. He's just such a badass. And then he gets killed.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that really struck me watching it again, I mean, I have watched it so many times, but not for maybe a few years, is it's quite interesting how much humor there actually is constantly, and even in really serious scenarios. They're doing quite funny things. Like, there's little Timmy who's just trying to climb over the fence that is supposed to be electrified, and he doesn't, unknown to him, meanwhile, Laura Dern is turning on all the electricity all over the park. And he gets about halfway down before the electricity comes on, and of course he's zapped and flies off the fence and gets caught by Alan Grant. Now, 10,000 volts just went through a small child, and I noticed that in the foreground they kind of obscure his body lying on the ground with a piece of foliage, because obviously this is quite a shocking thing, particularly in that time period. He basically, he's dead. And yet, they managed to make it light as well, because when he does wake up, he has been counting down or counting up to jumping off the fence. And when he wakes up, the first thing he says is, 3. Yeah. And you all laugh and it's all fine. And there's moments like that throughout all of it where something really serious is happening. Somebody's being eaten. Somebody's being chased, something terrible's happened, and there's this humor absolutely everywhere. And it's amazing that works. It's not cheesy. It's not, it's not dumb. It's just every single
It's almost very human in that they have to make it light somehow, right?
I think all the very best kind of sci-fi and fantasy films have a good use of humor in them, because I think for audiences, it really helps sell the reality of the situation if people make jokes about it. So relating to that, one of my favorite kind of uses of humor is in, have you guys seen the film Children of Men? Mm-hmm. So it's about this kind of really dystopian future where no more children are being born. And there's a really great scene in it where they're discussing, how terrible it is that no children are being born. And one of the characters, who's played by Michael Caine, tells a joke, which only works within the kind of universe. So he's saying, let me tell you a joke. And he goes, yes, we started to notice that no more children are being born. What do you think about that? And then the other guy goes, well, I'm not sure, but this stork really is delicious. That's that kind of only works in the universe of the film, but it's a really good joke. And so I think the use of humor is really important, and it does help to sell and ground it in a kind of reality if the characters make jokes when they're under stress, or if those jokes relate to the situation they're in.
But it's funny because I don't think that I think some modern movies have still tried to do it and they get it so wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm sure smarter people than me have identified why it works in some movies and not others. But I feel like in Jurassic Park, there was just the perfect amount of humour throughout to keep it entertainment, even though actually it's quite shocking and horrible because people are being literally eaten alive.
But only lawyers, so that's okay.
Yeah, he gets good shaking as well, which I really love the behaviour of the shake when he gets caught. And it's later repeated when this is for those who, I can't imagine there's anyone, but for someone who hasn't seen this film, when the lawyer gets eaten by, of course, by T-Rex. And then later, a Gallimimus also gets eaten by T-Rex, and they repeat this behaviour of it being grabbed and shaken a little bit, which is a really lovely observation.
Yeah, the death shake.
Which is based on the science as
even
well,
when they
isn't it?
play.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few really nice bits of behavior that they discuss in the movie as well, like obviously the velociraptors, which are being kept in their high security enclosure because they're so incredibly dangerous, and have been testing the fences whenever the feeders come to try and work out if there's any weaknesses so that they can escape, because they remember. As Muldoon famously says, but earlier in the film they foreshadow what's going to happen, of course, when velociraptors escape, and it's a really beautiful bit of behaviour, because Alan Grant at the start of the movie tells this kid about how velociraptors hunt, which of course always had me thinking, how does he know that? He studies their bones. Yeah. Anyway, but of course it's to set up what's going to happen later when Muldoon, who of course is this amazing hunter, he goes to hunt the velociraptors, but lo and behold, it's a trick. They've got one that he can see that he's hunting, and actually the one that's hunting him appears, and he has this, of course, the amazing clever girl line. But I love the whole setup of that, because it's so beautifully, it's a way of telling you how intelligent they are. Mm-hmm. Without having to tell you anything. I mean, obviously they also managed to figure out how to open doors and things like that. But it imbues the velociraptors with a personality. And I think in the new movies, of course, they wanted to build on that. And they have the velociraptors being ridiculously over personified and having too much, an excess of personality in the new movies. But in Jurassic Park, it's just the right amount, because it's unsettling. Really
it
unsettling.
Yeah, and they have character, but they're also still very much animal as well. Their intelligence is related to their hunting and makes sense. As a problem-solving carnivore, they could open the doors with handles. A lot of problems might have been solved if they had doorknobs instead.
Knobs, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe in the next Jurassic Park when he rebuilds, that's what they'll do. But yeah, they are really scary. And I was sort of shocked to read up that the kind of very scary scene in the kitchens when the velociraptors are hunting Lex and Tim. Most of the shots in there are of people in velociraptor suits, essentially. Mm-hmm. That a lot of the work there was actual humans inside dinosaur suits, because it's sort of seamless between the sort of CGI parts and the kind of real puppetry that's there.
But I also think this is why movies like Jurassic Park and several others from that time period endure in a way that I don't believe any of our films we're making now will, because so much of it, like there are digital parts and you can see them. They haven't necessarily aged brilliantly, but they did so much of it using actual puppetry. And
practical effect.
There's nothing that can beat that. It doesn't matter how good your CG is, it's just not as good as having an actual puppet.
Yeah. Definitely. I agree 100%.
In that kitchen scene, as I understand, the parts that aren't done with people in costumes are not CG. They're actually still stop motion animation.
Oh, really?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So compared to all the other stop motion movies we've seen, the distinction between the stop motion and the CG is almost imperceptible still 30 years later.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've got a humorous observation and then a more serious scientific one. One is that I had never noticed before when they step off the helicopter onto Isla Nublar, where Jurassic Park is. Have you ever noticed the uniform for people who work at Jurassic Park? It's beige, long shorts, and baby pink top. Is their uniform. They're all wearing this really bizarre sort.
No, I didn't notice that. They should be wearing red, like that's the Jurassic Park color, right? Red and yellow.
But my slightly more serious observation is one of the things that bugs me a lot is this idea in Jurassic Park that they have that herbivores are safe. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they have, of course, the big friendly Brachiosaurus that they feed in the treetops, but also the Triceratops that has been has had some drugs, so it's like woozy and everything. But even then, Alan Grant lies against its stomach to listen to its heartbeat, and they're poking it in the mouth, and they're getting right up close. I've seen footage of them having sedated, big herbivores in Africa when they have to work on them and things. These things are still dangerous when they're sedated. They're they're far more dangerous than the carnivores.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think that's something we've talked about before. Is that I don't know where exactly this idea that if it eats grass, then it's safe. No, I mean, if anything, it's more dangerous because it's used to dealing with things wanting to eat it, and it'll sort of get pissed off very, very easily. You know, you talk to anyone that lives in places with large herbivores and large carnivores, it's not lions and leopards that they're worried about. It's hippos, it's wildebeest, it's Cape buffaloes, which are the worst. Those are the things that will kill you. And even, you know, in this country, how many people a year get killed by cows? It's more than you think, for sure.
Yeah.
But it would be a very different film, I think, if they were, you know, trying to run away from a giant brachiosaur accidentally stepping on them.
Well, I don't think that they would stand a chance, to be honest.
No. Although, I mean, that's something that they make quite good use of in the King Kong film that we did the other week. They have a stampede of sauropods, which squashes a few folk underneath, and it's quite scary.
Good. I like to hear that. A good squashing from a sauropod. I mean, Jurassic Park could have been a much shorter movie if they got out of the cars at the very start and just got stepped on.
Yeah. Because, you know, Ellie wasn't looking, and so one of them just stood on her because she was too entranced by the leaves.
Yep.
There's quite a few artistic liberties that were taken, which we could probably address quickly, like the idea that the Tyrannosaurus has bad vision and it can't see anything unless it moves. And again, Alan Grant says this before he knows that real dinosaurs exist when he's talking to that kid. But there's no way that he would have known that from fossils. But also, I think Tyrannosaurus had good vision because Tyrannosaurus has forward-facing eyes.
Yeah, so it would have 3D vision.
Yeah.
I think they also had to have that, though, because otherwise they just wouldn't have stood a chance with the T-Rex. You know what I mean? They had to have some kind of ability to get away. And if
some kind of weakness.
If they didn't have that, they'd just be done.
That's true.
Yeah, at least where they've taken artistic liberties, it serves the plot in a useful way. The other one is the Dilophosaurus, which spits venom and has a frill.
Yeah.
And that's the one that kills Dennis Nedry. That's an interesting thing. I remember from reading the book, the point of this is like these are things that you would never know from just fossils of bones. So if we were to bring dinosaurs back, we would probably find strange things like this that we wouldn't have expected. So I think that's the reason that Michael Crichton added that. And then the last one that I wanted to point out is the velociraptors, which in real life are relatively tiny. They're about like a dog sized.
Turkey sized.
Yeah, turkey sized. And the reason that they're larger is they're based on not Velociraptor, but Deinonychus, which at the time was the largest known dromaeosaurid. But they're actually slightly larger than Deinonychus because Deinonychus
I thought they were Utah raptors.
Well, Utah raptor was found while they were making the movie. Like they didn't know about Utah raptor when they made the movie. That's my understanding, at least.
Because it's the size of a Utah raptor. Velociraptors are quite small. Right?
Yeah, they created these extra large velociraptors, and then after they'd created them, Utah raptor was discovered, which basically fits the size and shape of the velociraptors they created almost exactly. And I think it's Robert Backer again that has a book that he wrote in the mid-90s called Raptor Red, which is about Utah raptors back when the raptors were still popular in the 90s.
Raptors were all the rage in the 90s.
Some people get very, very angry if you call them raptors rather than velociraptor. I know.
But if you call them dromaeosaurids, then nobody knows what you're talking about.
True. But if you call them raptors, you might be talking about birds, which is something that triggers some people I know.
But they are birds. They're the same thing.
Really
birds are dinosaurs.
Well,
so draw
STEM
that line
birds.
then.
Yeah.
Where's the line drawn?
slippery slope.
Yeah.
There is a line that I was actually listening a lot to what Ellie Sattler and Alan Grant, the two paleontologists, were saying, just kind of thinking about what would an actual scientist say? What would I say if I had been brought there? And I was thinking a few different things. I mean, one is that I just think knowing I'm not saying that all paleontologists are like this. Knowing a few paleontologists, and particularly dinosaur paleontologists, I cannot imagine that they wouldn't just go around going, well, that's not Jurassic. That's not even Jurassic.
Yeah.
That's not Jurassic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also these like little mistakes, like Alan Grant at one point says, you can't suppress 65 million years of gut instinct. Well, putting aside the fact that it's 66 million years and not 65, but that doesn't even make sense because T-Rex and all the rest of them, they've been dead for 65 million years, so they haven't got 65 million years of gut instinct. They have, I don't know how many million years T-Rex was around for.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Probably maybe 5.
T-Rexes would have been, yeah.
Yeah, so like little things like that I just think, scientists would never say that. And when they want to stop that ride, the ride. Okay, so when they all get on that ride and they find out about dino DNA and how it's all done, I want to know what the rest of the ride was. Because they break it to get off early. But I'm like, where's this thing going? Because they've told you what happens, they've showed you the lab, and then it's continuing to go. I'm like, what's the next stage?
What's next most exciting after seeing like dinosaurs being born?
Exactly.
Where do you go from that? I don't know. Maybe it just takes you straight to the tour, and then you go and see. Maybe it's got like a viewing hatch to see some of the actual adult dinosaurs. But it's going to be hard to top for sure.
Or maybe it's got somebody dressed up as a dinosaur being really embarrassing, doing like a sort of, like interactive acting, which I always hate when you go to a theme park and there's somebody who wants to interact with you.
Well, I always thought it was silly how they set it up because John Hammond would have to be there for every showing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's clearly not
that's true.
Man.
Or maybe he can have like a double or something like.
That's the actor. A clone.
A clone, yeah, exactly.
Could you imagine you're being cloned and brought to life just to play that one part all day, every day?
Oh, jeez.
But when they break the ride to get out, the two paleontologists, one of them says something, and Ross, I assume that you can probably answer my question about what it is that he means. Alan Grant says, how do you interrupt the cellular mitosis? So Ross,
yeah,
how do you interrupt the cellular mitosis?
Well, yeah, quite easy. I mean, that's like, it sounds very sciencey for sure, but it doesn't mean anything. Mitosis is just cell division. So, I mean, that's something you want to happen. You don't want to interrupt that if you're trying to clone stuff. There's a few kind of, although it does get the science really right for the most part, there are a few places where they've just said, oh yeah, this sounds sciencey, we'll just say that. And I think, we notice it because it's our specialty, but I'm sure if you were to speak to a chaos mathematician or a chaotician, they'd have something to say about Ian Malcolm and his very seductive chaos maths that he pulls on Ellie Sattler. Sorry.
Well, I've never met a chaos mathematician, so I'm just assuming they are all like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're conventions. I'm
sure they have to deal with that stereotype as we have to deal with the paleontologist stereotypes as well.
Well, I mean, Alan Grant's line there isn't as bad as Sattler's. That's the one stupidest thing she says in the movie, because she says, "Can we see the unfertilized eggs?" And I'm thinking,
oh yes, I remember that too. I know, yes.
I've got 12 unfertilized eggs in my fridge. I want to see them.
Maybe that's why the Jurassic Park kitchen is so close to the lab. Maybe that's what they do with all the kind of offcuts.
Yeah.
It's not just Jell-O. They've got omelets, boiled eggs, all sorts of stuff there. Maybe she was just hungry. Maybe that's why she was asking.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about this movie that's pretty absent from the rest of them, and the reason that this one is such a good movie, is that there's a big theme about scientific ethics, which is not something that really makes its way into movies that much. So Hammond brings in all these scientists expecting they're going to be really thrilled about this, and all of them are really skeptical, at least, that what he's doing can work and is an okay thing to do. And like, Ross, maybe you have something to say about this, because I know you have interest in rewilding and de-extinction.
I think it's a really fantastic point. There's not many films that have such a really fantastically well distilled philosophical point as Jurassic Park has, with the very quotable and very true, they tried so hard to see if they could. They didn't stop to think about whether they should. And that's an amazing quote, which I use as often as I can, because it is something that definitely nowadays is something that we should all be thinking about as scientists. Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. There's a very real disjunction between can and will, or can and should, and definitely for Jurassic Park. I mean, it's again it's an update of the Frankenstein story. It's not untamed science and turning on its creators kind of story, which of course Michael Crichton did before with Westworld, his first kind of theme park gone wrong story. But yeah, definitely, it's an amazing. I think it really helps the film to have this really amazingly well thought out philosophical nugget right at the center, that all the way through. Once Ian Malcolm says that, it stays with you, and you think, well, yeah, of course the T-Rex is going to get out and eat people. Of course, things are going to go horribly wrong, because why have they brought dinosaurs back? What was the point? Just to stick them in a big zoo for people to come and pay millions of dollars to see them just for money? I mean, that isn't ethical. And those are really, that is the big question that people have to grapple with.
They have this wonderful dinner scene as well, don't they, where they have the big discussion about all of this, and it's beautifully put together. I mean, having the lawyer who has been brought there because of all of these concerns about people getting eaten, and he's now totally on the opposite side. He can't wait. The dollar signs are in his eyes. All he can think about is how he can charge any amount of money and people will pay it. And meanwhile, of course, the paleontologists have gone the other way. They're all thinking that this is a bad idea. And the whole debate they have is beautifully put together. I mean, obviously, it's kept at a light enough level to engage the audience. But like you say, Ross, I think it's so incredibly quotable. And really kind of bang on. And Ellie Sattler gets some good lines about how, they've brought these animals back, but then they haven't paid any attention, for example, to the food stuffs that that the herbivores are going to be eating, and whether they're poisonous or not, and then the plants that they've got in the building that might be poisonous. And that basically, what is it? They say something about having, I think it's what's his name? Chaotician, Malcolm, who has the lines about not having to earn the knowledge that they used to bring these animals back. And it's not just that, of course, doesn't just apply to the scenario of bringing back dinosaurs. That kind of applies to all science, because obviously none of us, very few of us, I think, really make any real initial discoveries. We are all working on other people's research. And there's ethical considerations to have about not having had to go through the struggle of earning the initial research.
And definitely also the question of what is our research for is something that I think is certainly in my kind of background is definitely a question that's been very rarely brought up. What is the point of what we do? Just because it's cool, well, that is one reason, but there has to be something bigger than that. And it's something that goes back, even to Darwin, when he's in his writings, he's always talking about how any finding has to be for or against something. It has to be either for a position or against a position to be of any use. It's no good just generating data. You have to test it against something, or else it's just no use to anyone. And that's something as well that these Jurassic Park researchers should have been thinking about. What were they doing it for? What was their hypothesis essentially? What were they testing by trying to bring back dinosaurs? Yes, you could say that they were trying to get an idea of what these things look like when they're alive, which you can't get from the bones. But even now, we're sort of discovering that you can get some really high scale resolution of what living dinosaurs look like. I'm thinking of things like the amazing Protoceratops, which was found with preserved like spines all over it, and colors almost preserved, and quills and stuff.
Was that not a Psittacosaurus that you're thinking of?
Oh, Psittacosaurus, that's right. Yeah, Psittacosaurus. And there was just the other week, there was a pterosaur fossil found that had some kind of preserved evidence of the coloration that it would have had in life. So yeah, I've forgotten what my original point was, but it was there somewhere.
So I guess, I wonder, you visit the park if it existed?
Oh yeah,
in a
hands
heartbeat.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just had this big long conversation about the ethics. We were like, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would probably wouldn't work for it. It depends how much they were offering, I guess, as a salary, but and what their insurance were like. But I mean, it's tricky. Definitely this is how this is the question that people, if we go and visit zoos, we have to ask. Are the zoos ethical? Do they have are they just money making enterprises, or do they contribute to conservation? Do they contribute to stud books and keeping diversity of populations return into the wild, that kind of thing? These are all really good questions, and as consumers, as potential patrons, we have to kind of ask ourselves, is it worth it, and is it ethically viable? I mean, I'm sure not very many people think about that, but once you get a certain amount of knowledge about a thing, then it does ruin it for you forever, essentially. So if you kind of have dealt with zoos and zoo animals and things like that, then you know that some are better than others.
I mean, one of the real legacies of Jurassic Park, I also think, is just the way that it shaped people's opinion of what paleontology is and what paleontologist is and does, what they ought to look like, what they spend their time doing. I mean, paleontology is considered such a cool science, but I'm not sure if it would be if it hadn't been for Jurassic Park, because the reality of paleontology, I hate to break it to everyone, but it's pretty boring. I mean, if they were really to go and visit, Dr. Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler, they'd actually both be in an office with their shoes off because, it's really warm in the office and nobody stops the heating. And they've been coding for hours. And there's no windows, so they don't know what the weather's like right now. Exactly. And they've been teaching all week, so they've got absolutely no research done. And, it's just a job. It's just another job. But, of course, that's not.
Apart from the 2 weeks a year when they're in the field.
Mm-hmm. Which is when he arrives with a helicopter to recruit them, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And very easily by just saying he'll fund them for the next 5 years, I think is what he says. And they're like, sure.
Who wouldn't take that though?
Yeah, exactly. That's also good research by Michael Crichton, knowing that any scientist would be like, yep, sure, whatever. You want me to go and hand feed real T-Rexes? For 5 years.
Yeah, whatever.
No problem.
Yeah.
But another thing is he's already been funding them before that, and he suggests that the amount he's been funding them is $50,000, which I feel like that's not going to go very far for a field season. $50,000 is probably barely paying for that high-tech sonar thing they've got, or radar, or whatever, ground penetrating radar. Even in the early 90s, 50,000 is not that much.
I'd still take it.
Yeah. Strange millionaires turning up in a helicopter throwing money at you. Yeah, fine. That's okay.
Yeah.
But I think if there hadn't been Jurassic Park, then what would the stereotype of a paleontologist be? It would probably be Ross from Friends. That would be the next most
famous
kind
one,
of archetypal. Next most famous paleontologist.
But then would Ross have been a paleontologist if they hadn't had Jurassic Park? Probably not,
good
right?
Point.
It would probably be that nobody even knew what it was.
Yeah.
If you think about it, there's a lot of scientists in that movie, in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's not that many movies that have such a huge number of scientists in them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it doesn't pass the Bechdel test, though, does it? There's only one female character.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit Lex.
Actually, that's true. But
they don't talk to each other.
I don't think that Ellie and Lex ever talk to each other.
No, because she's with Grant the whole time, pretty much. And when they're together, it's in the computer room, and Ellie's holding up the door while Lex is hacking into the Unix mainframe or whatever she's doing.
And I mean, there are, of course, loads of things like that we could pick out. Like I think if not the very first conversation that is had with Ellie Sattler in the whole movie is where Alan Grant says to her, "Oh, do you want to have kids?" Mm-hmm. Like immediately she is mothered right at the very first conversation, which is quite frustrating. But I think she more than makes up for it by being so amazing.
Yes, agreed.
Definitely in the book, and only slightly in the film. Grant and Sattler are meant to be a couple, but it's very kind of low key done. It's not It's not, there's hardly any kind of intimacy, let alone, contact between the two of them. They seem to be, it's hinted that they're a couple just when Dr. Malcolm's putting the moves on. But it's interesting that they chose not to oversell that, which I think is probably good. I think the film would have suffered if they tried to make them more kind of lovey-dovey, essentially.
Yeah. And Alan Grant, when Ian Malcolm is putting the moves on her, before he knows, before Ian asks Alan if they're together, he gets annoyed, but he doesn't stop anything which is quite nice because Ellie is her own person and her own woman, right?
Yeah.
She can.
Yeah.
So.
And he's always on the lookout for the next ex-Mrs. Malcolm.
Mm-hmm.
Which is another great line.
Yeah, but I would like to see a version of Jurassic Park with all the other things that would have been fed on by mosquitoes. Because I think, I think there's actually scope for an incredible array of really interesting things. Like, so if they're feeding on dinosaurs, but they're not also feeding on some crocline archosaurs as well, which I think were still around for quite a long time. In fact, throughout the whole Mesozoic. And of course, in the other movies, there's obviously flying reptiles and marine reptiles too.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to ask, which is just brought. I haven't seen the other films. I have seen the trailers, and in one of the recent films, they have like a mosasaur. How the fuck did they get DNA from that? I mean, there's no underwater mosquitoes that are going to be sucking its blood.
When it was basking.
Is that ever explained? People that have seen those films?
I don't think it was.
I think they throw out most of the science by that point.
Yeah, that's why I don't feel like I've missed out by not seeing any of the other films.
Okay, but you got to watch number 2 at least.
Okay, I'll watch number 2.
Crichton at least wrote that one. What I was going to say is there's this cartoon. I just did a quick Google to try and find it, but I can't. It doesn't come up right away. Of what would happen if Jurassic Park was set in any other time period, and so it all has like Ian Malcolm being attacked by things. So like insects or whatever, and the best one is the trilobites when they're like run, and then this is like slow trilobite little coming around. That's pretty funny.
So do we have to bother ranking this movie against any other movies
it's
we've
up there
seen?
with Encino Man, obviously.
Yeah,
it's better than Encino. I put it better than Encino Man, but
I don't know if Elsa knows, but Encino Man is our kind of criteria by which all other films are judged.
Oh, I see.
Because it's the best one we've seen. There was something else that was almost up there with Encino Man. What was that?
Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes, yeah.
Alpha, we liked Alpha.
Alpha, yeah.
Alpha was good, yeah.
But it was no Encino Man.
I don't think I've seen it.
It's a good. You should watch Encino Man or Alpha.
Yeah, you should watch it.
Encino. How's that spelled?
It was called California Man in the UK.
Oh, okay. No, I have heard of that.
Yeah. Furious Googling going on right now.
Yeah, I'm just refreshing my mind.
Brendan Fraser and Sean Astin.
Pauly Shore.
Oh, yeah.
Pauly Shore, of course.
Yeah, I remember that.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I have seen it.
Okay.
A long time ago. And
it's good.
That's your 10 out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll rewatch
it tells you something about the rest of the films we've seen, I think.
Okay, well, I'll have to rewatch that to remind myself it's a 10 out of 10. Why it might be a 10 out of 10.
Well, listen to our podcast on it too. We might convince you.
I will. And so when you rate movies, do you only give them one overall rating, or do you rate them is there categories of rating?
We just randomly give them a number based on our mood of the day. We don't even calibrate them. We don't bring it up again. We don't.
No.
So it's not entertainment value, scientific accuracy.
No, it's completely random.
Maybe we should have been doing that all along.
Yeah, maybe we should have been.
Could go back.
Yeah. We could make a list, put it on the website.
Yeah, we could do a spreadsheet. That'd be exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing more exciting than a spreadsheet.
Yeah. We've watched a couple of zeros, which 10,000 BC was a zero, and then the horrible one that we watched a couple of weeks ago, Neandergen was definitely a zero.
That was a negative. I think that was proceeding into either imaginary or negative numbers, one of the two.
Well, yeah. I mean, for me, Jurassic Park has to be 10 out of 10 on any scale because, as I say, I forgive it the things that we subsequently have identified and realized are just, real nonsense. At the time, a lot of those things, people still knew that they weren't entirely accurate, but it was mind-blowing all the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I think across the board it's going to be a 10.
And entertainment value.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think there's another movie that I can watch. I watched it last night. I could literally watch it again tonight and I would still be really happy.
Oh, yeah.
I could watch it every night for a year and I probably wouldn't get bored.
It's my comfort movie, like that you just put on with popcorn and even my brother-in-law talks through movies all the time, but even he knows he has to be quiet during Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's not my comfort movie. I think my comfort movie is also in a similar theme would be Raiders of the Lost Ark. That would be the one I would choose to put on. That's the one I could watch again and again, no problem. But yeah, definitely Jurassic Park is great and holds up really well. I think it hasn't aged like many of the early 90s films have.
It's so incredibly quotable.
Yeah, yeah. Even in professional context, like I'm sure all of us have used a Jurassic Park quote in a talk or in a poster or even in a paper.
Oh yeah.
We always find a way.
Yes. Nice.
Excellent.
And Josh, being a movie-phile or cinema-phile or whatever it's called, how have you not watched Godfather?
Am I a cinephile?
Yeah, well, you started a movie podcast. You have to watch 1 and 2.
I started a Stone Age podcast.
Watch 1 and 2, not 3, but you got to.
Okay. So, Elsa, do you want to plug any social media or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, I guess I probably should be better at this sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, if people ever want to find me online, they can usually find me on Twitter. I'm at GScienceLady. And if you like rocks as much as I do, then I also have an Instagram, which is just my name, and I post a lot of rocks.
Ooh, I'm going to follow you. I like rock.
But you should also plug Elsa's excellent books, plural, which she has out. She's been incredibly busy. She's got an amazing book called Beasts Before Us, which ties in nicely because it's about prehistoric animals. It's about the mammals of the Mesozoic.
And before,
and later, and before as well, yeah. And also her other book. Well, I should stop telling people about your books. You tell us about your books, Elsa.
My first one is Beast Before Us. So yeah, it's basically the untold story of mammal origins. So it's the bits that you don't usually get told. So for example, right from the beginning in the Carboniferous, through the Permian, into the Triassic, Jurassic and Cretaceous, and it focuses on all the stuff you don't usually get to know about. But yeah, I just had a second one come out this year, and it is The Earth, A Biography of Life, in which you've attempted to do a kind of biography of our planet, but told through the lens of particular organisms. So each one of these organisms is telling us about either an ecosystem or a way of life or something like that. So yeah, they're like windows sort of into the evolution of our planet. So if you like pop sci, do check them out.
Yeah,
wow,
great.
It's impressive. I've marked them as want to read in Goodreads.
Yay!
All right, well, thanks for being with us here, and if you ever want to join us for another movie, you're welcome to
definitely
do that as well.
I would love to. Yeah, I'll try and think of one with more mammals in it.
Well, you could come for we've done Ice Age, but we could do Ice Age 2 or something, or Ice Age 37.
Don't know what they're on to now. Yeah, or maybe something with a Dimetrodon or some other kind of.
Oh yeah, that would be good. That's something we've not seen in any of the kind of dinosaur films that we've, classically Dimetrodon is lumped in with the dinosaurs, even though it's not.
Is it not in one of the journeys to the center of the Earth or something? There's an iguanodon, iguana with a
sail on its back,
stuck on its back or something.
Oh yeah,
like
maybe.
And of course, it is in The Land Before Time, isn't it?
Is it?
I think it is. Isn't it?
The cartoon one.
Oh no! Wait, no. It's. Or am I thinking? No, I'm thinking of the scene in Fantasia. My brain just went.
Oh right. I don't think I could watch The Land Before Time again.
I think there's something in Land Before Time, but I thought it would look more like an Edaphosaurus or something similar to Dimetrodon.
With a tiny head.
Maybe that's what we need to rewatch next. It's not got mammals in it, but I can't rewatch it though because I'll just cry.
It's too sad. It's too sad.
I know.
Every single time. My kids have it on DVD, and if you watched it, I'm just like, no, I'm going to have to leave the room. It's just...
Yeah, it's too much.
I got given it on Blu-ray, and I was like, Thank you. I've never watched it. Don't tell my brother that I've never watched it because it's just too thing.
Yeah, it is. It's really, really sad.
Kids just have hearts.
They need to get a good dose of tragedy early on, just so they know what life's all about. That's what it is.
If you've been enjoying Screens of the Stone Age, get in touch with us. Follow us on Twitter at SOTSA_podcast and on Facebook at SOTSA podcast, or send us an email to screensofthestonage@gmail.com. Screens of the Stone Age is supported by the Paleoanthropological Society of Canada. Find out more at pasc-scpa.ca.